Hi, everybody. I'm here with Danny Wallace. We've both got the same book, but not only have we both got copies of the same book, we've both written the same book.
More or less.
The story
More
of
or
how
less.
the internet died, how all the screens went blank. I'm
Mm,
very excited about this conversation because normally I'm meeting people here that I haven't met before, whereas I've known Danny for a long time. He was
yeah.
abandoned and left on my doorstep after newspaper when he was just like, what, 28, 29 years old.
Something like that. Yeah, you didn't bring me in for three
No, no,
days.
no, it didn't. But I've
I
looked
was just
after you.
I was a 6 foot baby, just in a wicker basket.
And this is going to be one of the most interesting book conversations we've ever had on here because we really have written the same book.
Yeah, I know. I remember I was talking on the phone one day in the summer or something, and I must have been writing mine, and you were writing yours, and you gave me a brief outline of what yours was, and I was like, "Stop now, stop." And you were like, "What?" And I was terrified that you were going to think that I was copiously making notes and trying to write mine as fast as possible, or perhaps that I just went, "That's a good idea that Frank's just told me." But we were
These
writing at
are
the same
horrible. It's
time. And
every writer. So just to
yeah,
help people catch up, Danny's written a book about the day the internet stopped, the day the screens went blank. And my new book, which comes out after Danny's, it's version 2, it's the improved one, is also the day the internet stops. And that is
yeah.
every writer's nightmare, that you're talking to another writer and it's like you both had the same idea. So
I know.
we've assiduously not spoken to each other till now, more or less.
Absolutely right. No, it's funny, and there are differences. I think you're specifically with the internet, and I'm just with screens. So it's that idea that because I look around. I've never been anti-screens, right? I'm not those people that frown at parents in restaurants because the kids have got a tablet out at the end of the meal. I think it's quite useful, and it keeps them entertained for a little bit. And we've had our family chat, and then they can do that, and I can talk to my wife for a little bit, which never happens. Um, but it was when I was looking around and seeing that everyone had their own kind of screen that I thought, what if they just went? What if they just disappeared? And it felt like a horror movie idea as far as a kid was concerned. But then I thought it would also be a bit of a horror for the grown-ups because we pompously think that our screens are more important because they're grown-up screens. But actually, for a kid, especially in the last year, it's been if they're lucky enough to have access to one, it's not just entertainment, it's not just education, but it's being social. It's pressing a button and summoning up your delighted grandma.
Yeah.
And that I just think is invaluable. So, and it was a chance as
Timing of
well
it
for
is so interesting, isn't it? Because you've written this at a moment, we both written
yeah.
versions of it at a moment when I guess we're really sick of screens because we're spending
Mm,
so much time looking at them, but also discovered just how dependent we are on them as well. And
yeah.
this year would have been impossible without the screens, wouldn't it?
Well, absolutely. And I'm an only child, and I started thinking about the only kids and how I would have coped just being kind of, as an only child, you live in quite a grown-up world anyway, because you hear your parents talking to their friends and you hear their phone calls, and there's no one else kind of on your sort of level. So without screens, I think only kids, could really have suffered this past year far worse than they already have.
Yeah. And yet you've made it an incredibly life-affirming, funny book. And one of the things, and this is a bugbear of mine, but one of the things I love about the book is that the whole family's on the adventure. It's a road trip, effectively.
It's
Uh,
a road trip, exactly. It kind of happens. You meet Stella and her family, and they're having some together time. Something that they do every Sunday. They have their film night, and it's warming, and it's what families kind of do. But then you slowly realize that when they watch the film, they're all watching different films. Stella's got her phone out. Teddy, the little brother, is watching something on the
so
iPad, and
true.
Mum and Dad are just watching. And they're together, they're just not together.
Yeah.
And I thought that a road trip would be the easiest way to get them together and force them to be together. And also to talk about you know, I think everyone always, when they think about kids, they feel a bit of regret if they see their kid on a screen because you want them to be kicking a ball around or riding their BMX until the tires go bald. And that's because that was my childhood, and it's unfair of me to say that's what childhood should be
Yeah.
for my kids, who know how to code and do a bit of Duolingo
Yeah.
and all these kind of cool things that seems like science fiction when I was a kid. And it would be a chance for the parents as well in the book to share memories of their childhood, which were screenless, and you had to, if you wanted to phone someone, you had to ring their home phone and talk to a parent first, which is just horrifying. And you have to answer questions about how your mum is and how you're getting on at school. It's like these gatekeepers to communication. And if I wanted to watch a film, I couldn't just press a button and summon up a film. I had to get up, walk into town, go to some weird shop, walk in, go to the man or woman, some slightly odd person. I'd have to say, "Excuse me, may I please borrow a film?" And if they didn't have the film I wanted to watch, if one other kid in my town was watching that film, I wasn't allowed to watch the film. It was like, and that to kids now, you might as well be in black and white. It just sounds insane.
And that's films. In telly, it was kind of even more like, so when Doctor Who was off the air, it was off the air. And could you watch an episode of Doctor Who? No, not at all.
No,
not ever.
No,
no.
Exactly.
There were TV programs that when I was a kid, there was a series called Tales from Europe, which had this extraordinary film called The Singing Ringing Tree, which was a terrifying film. And everybody my age remembers it, but then it wasn't on again. And we were all like, did we dream that? Did we dream that?
Yeah.
And it was like a little club. So like, what's the kickoff? What made you start thinking about that? What was the...
Well, it was the sort of the idea, the horror of it at first. The kind of, I could kind of see the cover, I could see the kind of the type, and it was the big kind of what if they went blank? And I always like what ifs. What if the whole world stopped and you were the only person that could move around amongst all the frozen people? Which was an idea that I had when I was a kid, and I think lots of people will have had. Time stopping, but then it's what you do with it. And with the screens going blank, I thought, well, it's a strong enough start, to get me on the way. And when I threw in the big dilemma, which is that, when I was a kid, when you were a kid, if you wanted to ring someone, you had to remember their number. You had to store everything in your head. And, there were a lot more wrong numbers. You don't get wrong numbers anymore, really. But I guess back then there were lots of wrong numbers. And it was very exciting when that happened as well, when you talk to a complete stranger and they'd be like, "Oh, sorry, I've got the wrong number." And you'd want to sort of talk to them about it for a little bit. And it was exciting. You put the phone down. Who was that? Wrong number. So it was kind of, it was like a weird little mystery. And this family, they suddenly realized that all the screens have gone blank, not just where they live, but potentially further afield as well. No one knows why. And, they want to phone grandma, but none of the screens work. And so no one knows her number. Not even grandma knows her number. It's taken me 4 years to remember my landline number now. Yeah. But they can't just press G and get grandma, and they can't Skype her, and they can't email her, and they can't text her. So they've got to get in the car and drive there, other end of the country. And I thought that'll be an interesting journey, because how will the rest of the world be coping with no screens if you can't withdraw money because that screen's gone? If you can't pay for stuff, if you don't know how much petrol you've got left, because that's on your dashboard. GPS, I remember the first day I saw a sat nav in a taxi, and I was like, what is that? Yeah. That's incredible. Because up until then I wasn't driving much, because I would always get lost. I'd be too polite. I would see a turning, but think I didn't have enough time, so would just drive another 40 miles on the motorway. I would just go around in circles basically and crash into a tree. But when GPS came about, wow, you didn't need these huge maps. Remember, everyone used to have these big, thick yellow books, just full of every A road and B road. And proper men, you'd see the signs, it would say like, oh, junction 13 is closed. And I'm like, I don't know where, am I supposed to have memorized every junction and know where they go? So, that's lost them as well. So they have to take back roads, and it's a way of just meeting lots and lots of people along the way and discovering the things that they've been scared of, strangers, and whether there's kindness all around us, and whether there's hope and little moments of heroism and bonding, and whether they've been talking enough, whether their parents have been stressed about the wrong things all along, and what happens when they just decide to give up that stress and just enjoy the journey. And they have to get to grandma's. So it was a structure-wise, it was
brilliant.
Nice. Set it up and off you go.
I have to say, when I started reading it, I thought, road trip. Why did I not think of a road trip? Because it's got such a
Oh,
beautiful shape, and it's so flexible, and it also says to the audience it's going to end there, and the
hmm
audience kind of know that's kind of reassuring, but you also know that you're going to top it. You know that something there's going to be you're offering the
there's going
audience an ending. You know, we are
yeah,
going to get there, but it's
yeah,
you also promising them a twist. I think, which is great. I mean, it
yeah.
always works. Hook Finn, you know,
And
it's
it's like life, isn't it? It's, you have a destination, but it's about the little diversions and the back roads and the little things that happen. You could stick to the motorway your whole life,
yeah,
or you could follow your instincts. You could nip off here. You could stop for a little while. It's kind of yeah. It's a nice kind of. It's a nice. I thought of it like a bit like the film Clockwise.
yeah.
If anyone hasn't seen it, John Cleese is a very uptight headmaster who has to go and give a speech somewhere and leaves his speech on the train because he's got on the wrong train. And from then on, it's just disaster after disaster. And I love stuff like that. So I thought I'd write a
Yeah,
family
I mean, it
friendly.
really works. I mean, it really does.
That's
I
good.
mean, every road trip has got that kind of shape, and you've really kind of made it work. I think made it sing.
Oh,
Um,
good.
Something that I was not expecting was that it's really good, which is a surprise to me. But I think
Yeah. Well,
he worked out my
I
idea. I
tried.
thought,
I tried with this one.
well, when it came out, I thought, God, I only gave him that idea a few weeks ago, and his book's out. He must have really rushed it,
Yeah.
But
It's. I should have put from the imagination of Frank Cottrell Boyce at the top of
yeah. Well, and it's got loads of pictures in, so there's not that many words.
Yeah, great
But
pictures. Gemma Corral is the
Gemma
illustrator.
Collins'
She's
pictures in
fantastic.
it are really terrific. They're really full of
Yeah.
life, and they're very funny in themselves. Um, I was surprised
Yeah.
because you've said that you like those big what if ideas, and normally when you've had what if ideas in the past, you've given them to Hamish.
hmm
Hamish and the World Stoppers, all those Hamish books, which I love. You know, I love those. The Hamish books are great.
Yeah. No, thank you.
But different. You came up with a new character. Why did you do that? It's Stella, who's fantastic.
Stella, I really like Stella, and when you're reading a book that you're really enjoying, and you can feel the pages slipping away, and you've just got like a thimbleful left, and you feel like you're going to miss that character in that world. That's how it felt writing Stella, and I could feel myself getting to the end and going, I'm going to miss her, and I don't think there'll be another one with Stella because I think that's her story, and now she lives in that world, and I think I sort of hopefully gave her what she needed. Um, and there are some things I don't really resolve in the book for the reader because I sort of felt like, well, that's Stella's business. And that's, she's told you the story in the way that she would tell you the story. And part of the reason for choosing a girl was one day my little girl, she was just noticing that there always seemed to be one girl on the cover of like an adventure. And she noticed that in cartoons, there was always one girl, and it might be a couple of lads and one girl.
Yeah.
And I wanted to write something for her and to show her, that boys don't have to write boys and girls don't have to write girls, and anyone can write whatever they want. And Stella just flowed. When I begin, I usually write anything. So, I might choose a name and then I just write anything about that name, that character. I might write about their shoes or what their cat is called or
So
what happened at school today. And it might not go into the book, but it's to get me to get to know, in this case, Stella. And so that when I started, I felt like I had a really good handle on who she was. And I really, yeah, like I say, I really enjoyed writing her. And it was different. I always like to try different things. And I thought, well, I wonder if I can just write a standalone, all in one tale, from the point of view of this 10-year-old girl. And it was just great fun. And I didn't make it a Hamish book because I felt like the Hamish world is a world where like anything can happen and there can be monsters and robots and all this. And I wanted this to feel like something that could happen and sort of did happen. As I started writing it before lockdown, and I wrote it on an old airbase, which is a very sort of creepy place out in Suffolk, and it's runways and hangars and crows, and it's sort of bleak and
And were
Cold
you
War like.
confined there by the government? Were they making you stay?
Yeah, yeah.
Was there a
I'm
lot
an
of barbed wire?
experiment. I'm an writing experiment, and so that kind of fed into it. But I had the radio on, and I realized that the world I was writing about, where the screens go blank, wasn't as weird as the world outside my window. And I don't just mean the airbase; I mean what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Restrictions and unthinkable things like seeing a sign saying "Go home,"
Yeah,
just all this mad stuff,
yeah,
and conspiracy theories and people trying to burn down mobile phone masts,
yeah.
and so that all seeped into the book, because that would happen if all the screens went blank. There would be conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone would think they knew what was going on.
Yeah,
Everyone would blame certain governments or groups of people, and it was just the madness of it. And so I thought, take this huge world-changing event and shrink it down to the size of a car and how it kind of affects the people in that car.
yeah,
Which I think a Hamish one would have had to be a huge thing where he finds out the reason and he goes to the heart of the government or whatever.
yes,
But for Stella, it's like, it's happened.
yeah,
I've got a mission. So how do I do it in this weird new
Hamish
world?
would feel
Which is
that it's up to him.
all the kids have.
Yeah, Hamish would feel it was up to him to get the screens back on.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, yeah, that's right. And I think what you got really right, what was very jealous of, was that you caught all that kind of anxiety and weirdness of this year, but a road trip was such a everybody wishes they were going somewhere, and it's such a taint. It's not like they've gone to the moon. It's like everyone is looking at the car outside the house, thinking, "God, I wish you'd just get into the car and drive somewhere," and
just
they do
go somewhere. And they do, and they're able to, put the windows down and turn on the music. No, the radio still works. They've got a little, a radio that a builder left at their house, so they can have music, but it's still a chance to talk in that strange way. I remember growing up and wanting to, press play and record every theme tune that I liked, or having to wait on a Sunday when it's the top 40 and try and get rid of the DJ. And it's not Spotify, it's not playlist, it's not iTunes, it's not an iPod. So for the kids to kind of appreciate the simple things, new discoveries, you're not tailoring a playlist, you're listening to whatever someone happens to decide to put on the radio. It's a great way of exploring kind of a new world.
Yeah, it's weird, and it's weird how, I don't know, because that world that you're describing is the world that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And in fact, when I first started writing kids novels,
what was it like when they invented radio?
It was.
That must have.
Yeah. Well, I invented radio, don't you? Yeah. Well, kind of what happened with Marconi rang me up and he went, "I've got this. What are you working on?" And I said, "I've got this great idea." And he went, "Stop talking." And the next thing I knew, it was radio.
Yeah. Oh man.
But that thing of it's.
You're like a Liverpool Forrest Gump, aren't you?
But this should be, the world without the screens should be normal to me, but I've changed because of the screens, So I used to be, when I first started writing children's novels, I would see new novels where people had written phone calls in and I'd be thinking, that would never happen anymore, Why have they put that in? And now it's like, okay. And I did big drives, before I had GPS. And now if I'm driving even somewhere relatively familiar, but I'm not quite sure about the last 200 yards, I'll still put it into the GPS.
Yeah.
I drove across Brazil once with a page of A4 with some signs written on it.
Did you mean to drive across Brazil or were you lost?
No, I wasn't aiming for that. Actually, that is the start of my book, is that they're going to visit the Amazon warehouse, or I've changed the name, but they're going to visit the Amazon warehouse, and the GPS thinks it's taking them to the Amazon.
I know. Yeah, it's great.
I want to say, and what are you working on now? But I'm absolutely terrified.
Well, what are you working on?
I should have said, what are you working on now? And you could have said, you told me.
Yeah. Noah's Gold. I made a comment the other day. Noah's Gold, of course, being your book along very similar lines. It's got that just the feel of another classic, and it's sort of it's a little bit annoying picking up a Frank Cottrell Boyce book because it seems like you've somehow nailed the feel of classics constantly, and it's a very selfish thing to do, by immediately making your work good, and where you think, well, all the kids are going to end up reading this.
I think now that you've had my idea, quite a lot of classical authors will follow us, and we'll probably find that all these Dickens novels have got no phones and GPS in on all these.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember, they won't have any GPS in them.
I remember one of my first books. I guess it was about 20 years ago. I put in a little joke, an observation, not really a joke, just an observation, which was that when you text, and obviously that you didn't have the keyboard on your phone, it was you press 8 3 times to get W or whatever. And I discovered that Wagamama, it being one of my favorite restaurants at the time, was the only word I used where it just took one key press each time. So Wagamama.
Okay.
And it felt like such a modern observation to put in a book. It was like, this, wow, this is going to blow people's minds. A text joke, a reference to someone texting. And now here we are writing books about what happens when we get rid of all of that.
What happens if we don't? It is kind of hard to imagine. Yeah. What are you working on? No, I'm not going to ask you. But
no, it's
one thing that's like, it is very strange producing a book like this during lockdown, where you would be expecting to be out on the road, having your own road trip, doing lots of. So, what is how can people see? Are there going to be Screens Went Blank events or anything like that?
Yeah, I've done a few school events like this, and a bookshop event like this, and I guess we have to wait and see, I guess what happens, and whether people are used to stuff like this, and whether, like, a school event where you can talk to 3 schools at once and they don't have to get everyone in and out in this way, they can all do it from their classrooms, whether that turns out to be more convenient for them. So it's and also you can go farther afield, you could do the Highlands and the Islands and Brighton at the same time. So I guess it depends on people, really. But I wrote that in lockdown, and then I immediately wrote another one, which will come out early next year, which I just have to do, an edit on. So I've got another one coming out next year, and
a productive year.
It's been reasonably productive. I wrote a script and managed to sell that to someone. Whether that will just go into the normal drawer where nothing happens with it, but at least it's written and I like it. And then I'm sort of starting not a movement. I've started a few movements, but I'm starting a new thing. So I've been doing it kind of with a friend and just off our own back, and just writing and writing and writing. And we've written hundreds of thousands of words for what will become a thing pretty soon. And that's been quite nice to do.
And you don't want to say what the thing is? Because for those who don't know, too young to remember, Danny Wallace has founded countries.
I'm a king.
He's founded his own kingdom.
I'm a cult as well. I started a cult.
Which is the cult leader.
Yeah. So, I like to keep busy. But so that, and doing a radio show here in this room from on Sundays. So I've found ways to keep myself sane at this whole time, but also just the simple things, like, which went into the book, actually, just things like, it used to be that you just suddenly, it'd be autumn and you would realize, because the leaves were on the ground, it's autumn now. Whereas I've realized now that autumn hints that it's on its way. You get touches of autumn, glimpses of it, and then autumn is, I'm here, and then you're full into autumn, and then autumn starts to go away, and you start to get little hints of winter. And just watching those changes, the trees and the colours and the light, that's been quite cleansing in its own way the past year.
I think one of the best things children's books can give you is an awareness of all the little small pleasures, and that I do really believe that when things are really tough, it's small pleasures that will get you through, and being thankful for them and noticing them and helping you notice them is a really great contribution. I think this is a very small pleasure.
It's perhaps the smallest of all the pleasures.
I'm sorry I did that. No, but your book is full of those little indicators of things that are nice,
Mine's much shinier than yours as well, because of the light that I've employed. But yeah, no, it's full of yeah, small pleasures. Exactly, that's exactly what it's kind of about. Small pleasures, small kindnesses, small acts of heroism, small
This book
moments.
is like a compendium of them. It's a kind of roadmap to happiness, and it's also really, really funny. So
Good. Well,
I
I'm
think
pleased.
we should leave it there with that great encomium. And